Monday, everybody. Welcome in. This is Green Dot Daily. We are Action Network's daily sports betting show. I am your host, Brendan Glasheen. We are here every weekday at noon Eastern, streaming live on the Action Network app. And we're also available to you on the Action Network YouTube page. Green Dot Daily is presented by BetMGM. Use the bonus code ACTION when signing up to get free bet insurance up to $1,000. Terms and conditions apply. Some breaking news at the top of the show that we'll relay to you, the people. Arizona Cardinals reportedly have fired Cliff Kingsbury 1 year after giving him a contract extension. Their ownership has had discussions that they will be also bringing in a new GM. They pulled a plug after 1 year of Cliff Kingsbury having a contract extension. Ian Rappaport adds, while Kingsbury was never walking away, this feels more like a mutual parting than anything. It wasn't working for either side. There is probably some peace now. Kingsbury, 28-37-1 overall, his record with the Cardinals. He did cover just over 500, 34-30-2 against the spread. And we'll see. Maybe he goes back to college. Who knows? At Texas Tech, he was awfully successful early on in the early part of the season, but then games 5+ through the year, he kind of would peter out, and that's kind of what happened with the Cardinals. So we'll see what's next for Cliff Kingsbury. Back to the show. So we wanted to break that news. Cliff Kingsbury reportedly out in Arizona. Here's what we have coming up on the show today. NFL playoff bracket reaction. We have super wild card weekend set, matchups, spreads, totals. Nick Giffen of our predictive analytics department is going to join me, and we're going to break it down. We're going to go game by game. Nick might have a lean. He might have a pick already. So we will discuss that at length, and then also best bets in the NBA. But, of course, we know that the event of the day, everybody, is the national championship game in college football. Georgia, TCU. As we sit here now, the spread on BetMGM is 13.5. Total sitting at 63.5. Collin Wilson is on site in Los Angeles. He joins us. So does Mike Calabrese. These guys are very active when it comes to our college football coverage at Action Network. They're going to be on BBOC later tonight, which is our featured college show. And we're live at 6 o'clock tonight, guys. So we'll be, this is sort of the appetizer leading up to it. Collin, we'll start with you. Your latest temperature on this game. You're there. What's the pick?
Well, yeah, I'm going to go with TCU plus 13.5. I kind of doubt it touches 14 today, but really this is all injury dependent for me. That comes from the Georgia's offense with their leading target, Ladd McConkey. He's not able to cut on his knee. He is going to be playing in pain. And you will know this there are some prop shops out there that are well below some of his season averages and season totals and targets. So without, Stetson Bennett's main guy to throw to, and the fact that their second tight end, Darnell Washington, has a soft tissue injury, he's in a boot walking around. We don't know if that means they're hiding something or if he's going to play. But at a very high level, if you don't know schematics and X's and O's on football, if you can't run a 12 personnel with two tight ends, that was a huge advantage against a 3-3-5 defense of TCU. So if you're just going one tight end of Brock Bowers, that allows TCU to defend a lesser amount of passing zones. That's a lot to say for me to say I like TCU plus 13.5.
Mike Calabrese, where are you at on this game? Georgia, TCU, tonight, your pick.
Well, I like the Collins on TCU right out of the gate because I think that sets the right kind of pace for this game. Because what has Georgia done for really, almost half of their last 10 games? They've got off to some slow starts. You'll get that Missouri game, Kentucky game. They were disinterested against Georgia Tech. And even against Ohio State, they made some mistakes early on before they really started clicking. And that's what I think we need to push this game over the number. It continues to climb up, so I think the value's drying up a little bit. But just in general, when you look at what TCU's done defensively, they probably felt pretty good about their performance against Michigan, causing all that chaos, havoc, turnovers. They still gave up 45 points. So when I look on the other side, if Georgia falls behind by a touchdown, 10 points, I think that plays perfectly into the hands of the over, because that's when Stetson Bennett goes from a game manager to all of a sudden the Heisman candidate and finalist that he was this year. So I really do like Georgia to put on the afterburners, particularly in the second half of this game, and push it over the total.
Yeah, speaking of Stetson Bennett, you look at some of his available props over at BetMGM. His passing yards total set at 275.5. Passing touchdowns There's juice on the under, minus 210, 2.5, under 2.5 passing touchdowns. If you take the over, it's at plus 160. Collin, if you had a second pick here, what's your evaluation of Bennett and how you might want to look at him tonight?
I 100% agree with Calabrese's, prediction of how the game flow is going to go. TCU is going to roll the dice. And what that means is when Stetson Bennett throws, they're going to jump routes. They're going to give up explosives. There's going to be touchdowns by Georgia, but they're going to pick some off. TCU is going to pick some off too. And if you look, when I go back to the Ladd McConkey, being the number one target for Georgia, he wasn't available. He had 4 targets, 2 catches, minus 1 yard. He was a non-factor in the Peach Bowl. If he can't cut on that knee here, that means Bennett has to look at his other targets. He had 2 turnover-worthy plays. He had an interception, should have had 2 more interceptions. He's kind of a mess throwing to people not named Ladd McConkey and Brock Bowers. So I'm going to go with Stetson Bennett to throw an INT, flat money right now, even money. You can find it out there. That's definitely one of the props that I have in my national championship preview on Action Network.
All right, Stetson Bennett to throw a pick. So we're not going to the yards. We're not going to the touchdowns. He might turn the ball over tonight, and that bodes well for a TCU side, which you are on tonight. Calabrese, you have a second one for us?
Yeah, let's finish the season with a big hit here. I like the double results. You can get it at north of 7-1 at most books, where TCU's leading at halftime and Georgia comes back and wins the game in regulation. And honestly, I think as everything that Collin said in terms of what TCU brings to the table, there was, I would say, at least a little bit of market inflation on Georgia's pass defense because everyone kept pointing to the Tennessee game. They shut down Jalen Hyatt. There's no way that Marvin Harrison is going to be able to eat in the last game. He did. He was absolutely killing Georgia. That really swung the entire game when he gets knocked out, gets his helmet taken away from him. When you look at the TCU receiving core, I think they're going to be able to hit a lot of explosive plays and race out to a lead. And then, as we've seen time and time again, 88% completion percentage in the fourth quarter for Stetson Bennett in college football playoff games. The leading passer by passer rating in the SEC in the fourth quarter of the last 2 years. That's the linchpin of this bet. Yes, can TCU get a lead? Absolutely, because I think they're going to play as aggressively as possible. But I need a quarterback I trust in the fourth quarter. And interestingly, Stetson Bennett's one of the best that we've seen really in the last 5 years of college football. So at north of 7-1, I'm willing to roll the dice on what should be, in my opinion, a dynamite national title game.
So you want TCU to lead. You have TCU leading at half. Okay, that's the play here. Okay.
And also, I think it's nice to have the information both from Gillespie's side on the defensive side of the ball, as well as Sonny Dykes and his staff offensively. Were they liberated by the underdog status in their first game against Michigan? Absolutely. They didn't hold anything back. They were aggressive. They clearly were playing with 4 downs once they got into plus territory. All of these things I do think trend in their favor to at least hit Georgia in the mouth in the first 30 minutes of this game.
Now, the market's telling us it should be within striking distance for TCU. They're getting 7.5 as far as a spread in the first half. But the double result right now, TCU up at half, Georgia to come back and win the game. That's plus 650 at the current moment on BetMGM. Gents, we'll see both of you tonight, 6 o'clock, BBOC.
Yes, sir. For me.
Absolutely.
Okay, just double checking. Want to get my ducks in a row. And there's Collin Wilson. That's a beautiful credential. That's great. Enjoy yourself. Stay dry. There's going to be some weather, it looks like, or for most of the day, that is. Collin Wilson, Mike Calabrese, they've done a great job. Oh, great job all season, guys, covering college football at Action Network. And we look forward to the show at 6. You can do your goodbyes and your sob stories then.
Will do.
Thanks.
Okay, on to NFL Super wild card weekend. Here are your games, the game schedule, as well as sides here in terms of the spreads that are out right now on BetMGM. You've got Seattle, San Fran. That's a double-digit spread. Dolphins, Bills, double-digit spread. And then everything else is within a touchdown, including Bengals and Ravens. We've got questions at Lamar Jackson, who's going to be the quarterback for Baltimore. Is it Lamar? Is it not? And same question being asked about the Miami Dolphins. But that is the order of schedule. 2 games Saturday, 3 on Sunday, and then 1 on Monday night, Dallas and Tampa. We bring in Nick Giffen of our predictive analytics department at Action Network. And Nick, this is fun. Just me and you. We're going back and forth like we're a couple guys just hanging out. And we're going to go game by game. So first off, big picture, 10,000 feet back. What do you make of the slate? What do you make of the whole schedule?
Well, I think it's wild that we're going to have 6 rematches, right? So, I mean, right off the bat, Seattle, San Francisco, divisional rivals, but even games like the Chargers versus Jacksonville, they've already played in the regular season, despite being in different divisions within the AFC. So it's going to be rematch city, and I'm looking forward to it. We're actually going to have a Bet What Happens live for every single wild card game.
Really?
Oh yeah, it's going to be fun. We're going to be doing a lot of live betting.
Oh, so I did the podcast last night, the Action Network podcast recap show with Joe Gallant. He mentioned Monday, which I'm like, okay, that makes sense because Nick always does the Monday, Thursday standalone spot. Every game?
Every game. We're going to have a Bet What Happens live. We're going to be having other talent join us, whether it's Kerner or Raybon or Gilles himself joining us for Bet What Happens live as well. So it's going to be a fun wild card weekend.
That is fantastic. You are going to be Scott Hansen-esque. So hydrate and, take the breaks when you can. Take advantage of those breaks. But that's fantastic news. That's excellent. So we'll go game by game. We'll go right in order of the schedule, just because I think that's how folks process the weekend, not so much conference by conference. They're looking at it like, okay, what's first, what's next, and what's after that, so on and so forth. Seattle, San Francisco, two teams obviously familiar with one another. San Fran kind of handled their business rather easily, no matter who their quarterback was. What do you like in this game? Because the line's going towards San Fran, right? It's moving and moving and moving.
Oh, yeah. I like, if you can find it, I don't think it might be out there anymore, but if you can find anything better than -10 for San Francisco, I would definitely bet that. Crazy enough, they opened at like -6.5, -7 at some books, and I pounced on that immediately. And within 5 minutes, it was already up to -9.5. So I had to pounce on it right away. I actually had to double check my numbers because I was like, this has to be wrong. What my numbers have to be wrong because the books were posting such what I thought was a crazy line. I have San Francisco about a 10.5, 11-point favorite at a neutral site based off of third order Pythagorean win percentage. Now, that's not going to be the perfect number there, but that's going to get us most of the way there. So with that such a large gap down to the -6.5, -7 range, I had to jump immediately. But this is, absolutely. This is going to be a game where San Francisco dominates. I think Seattle's going to struggle to run the ball. I mean, San Francisco has the number 1 rush defense by defensive DVOA, while Seattle's only 24th on offense in terms of rushing. And this is just going to be a game where I think a lot of San Francisco's players will benefit from the fact that Seattle is a very heavy zone defense team. That's going to benefit both George Kittle and Deebo Samuel. That even can benefit somebody like Jawan Jennings. And this is a great game for Christian McCaffrey because he tears up zone defenses, and it's a great matchup on the ground for him. So I really, really like San Francisco in this one.
The irony, too, is I mentioned San Francisco cruised is strong, but they took care of business without much worry in the 2 games. And now you can make the case they're as healthy as ever with Mitchell back, Deebo back, and their defense is healing up. So this could be the best version of themselves facing Seattle for the first time this year in terms of being the healthiest they've been in the 3 meetings, and this one being their most healthy output in terms of personnel. Jacksonville and the Chargers, these teams met in week 3, and the Jags totally destroyed the Chargers. Now, at the time, Justin Herbert had an injury, and remember that line movement throughout the course of the week. We're like, wait, is Herbert playing? Is he not playing? And then last second, the Chargers ruled them in, and that messed up the line, but he clearly didn't look right. Chargers -1 on the road against the AFC South champs. What do you think?
Yeah, that was the Justin Herbert rib injury game or whatever. He'd gotten injured, hitting the ribs the game before. So not exactly the best shining example of how these two teams should match up. We are, of course, waiting on Mike Williams, Joey Bosa injury news, but either way, I still bet the Chargers -1 last night. There was some -2.5, -2s, and then it moved down to -1. So I definitely jumped on that. I have the Chargers by about 5 points at a neutral site per our third order Pythagorean win percentage. So even though, the Jaguars have home field advantage, that's not enough to get me down to -1. So I took the Chargers here at -1. This Chargers offense absolutely will be able to run through Austin Eckler, Keenan Allen, even Josh Palmer or tight end Gerald Everett with success. And so I think while the Williams injury hurts, he's their best receiver, I don't think it hurts a ton because this is going to be a matchup that I think really does favor the Chargers here in the way they can utilize their other receiving options in the passing game. On the Jacksonville side of the ball, I do think Lawrence to Christian Kirk is going to be the key for Jacksonville. There's both some like positives here and some negatives in this matchup for Kirk. In the first meeting, he had a 672-1 line. So, it really comes down to, will they be able to utilize Christian Kirk? He eats up man defense, but the Chargers, they do play man defense at a top quarter rate in the NFL, but the Chargers are also very strong versus the slot, and Kirk lines up in the slot around 70% of the time. So it's some good, some bad. So I think that's going to be the key if the Jacksonville Jaguars are going to have a shot.
Okay, and I'm fascinated too by the total in this game. It's moving up. It's up to 47.5, and I don't know. Maybe it's because these two teams, I'm not used to seeing them in the playoffs. I wonder, and they're getting. Chargers are healing up defensively. I know the Jaguars have their issues. They did just play the Titans, so you don't want to read too much into what they just did again. Really, their last 3 games of the year, the Jags. They really didn't play great competition. And if you look at some of their games where they trailed early, the Baltimore game where they had to come back and win the fourth quarter, and then the Cowboys game where they trailed 14-0 early. So
yeah, I'm interested maybe in an under if this keeps moving up, because our luck totals say this should be about 2 points to the under. These teams have outperformed expected score by about 2 points per game combined.
Yeah. So to your point, you might want to wait on it because I think it's still creeping and rising upward. Okay, on to Miami and Buffalo. This one, as I said off the top, we got to know who the quarterback is, right, for Miami before we do anything with it. They met week 3, hot as hell in Miami, and there were 90 plays in the game, so you could just see all the camera shots up and close. Plus it's early in the season. Offensive starters aren't playing in the preseason, so it could also just be conditioning, and it doesn't help when you're playing in Miami for the Buffalo Bills when they're in a cooler temperature area of the country. And then they just played in that Snow Bowl game where Tua held his own, but we don't know who the quarterback is. So how do you approach Miami, Buffalo, if it is Tua? If it isn't, explain.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the big question. Will Tua play? And one thing I did do, as I've been talking about with every single game so far, is I've been looking at third order Pythagorean win expectation. And we can do that for Miami and just use the blended starting quarterbacks. And if we blend all the starting quarterbacks together in the ratios that they were used, we would have Miami as about a 6-point underdog at a neutral site. So, that's neutral. And then you got to add in home field advantage for Buffalo. Is that 1.5, 2 points? It might depend on each home field is different. So that doesn't quite get us up to the +10. And then if Tua does play, I think there could be value on Miami if Tua plays, and I definitely think there'll be value on the under if Tua plays. One of the things that's interesting here is Josh Allen actually, as great a quarterback as he struggles versus the blitz. He is 31st of 39 eligible quarterbacks in passer rating versus the blitz, and Miami blitzes at the 6th highest rate in the NFL. Josh Allen is sandwiched between Marcus Mariota and Matt Ryan in that statistic, so not exactly elite company. And I think this is going to be kind of a Dawson Knox game. Miami struggles versus the tight end, so Josh Allen's going to maybe have to rely on Dawson Knox, and that's not exactly. Well, I love Dawson Knox. I don't think that's the key to putting up a ton of points here. And on the Miami side of the ball, I think Tua actually coming in will push this total upward, but we're showing value on the under. This is like a luck under we're almost 4 points under expectation than what they've actually combined for in the regular season. So if Tua comes in, Miami's going to have to score on some big plays, which Buffalo can allow, but those aren't expected. And if they fail to connect on some of those big plays to whether it's Waddle or Tyreek Hill, I think that'll help keep this under as well. So I'd like it to be closer and under if Tua plays. So that's what I want to wait for.
And you're suspecting if they do rule Tua in, the total right now at 43.5, how many more points does it go up?
I don't know, but I think if it goes over 44, I'm absolutely going to be jumping on it. So on the under here. So that's what we just have to wait and see.
Okay. Very good. Another matchup where these teams, and you brought this up, the rematch angle to all of these games, Giants, Vikings. you lean Minnesota -3, and these teams faced each other a couple weeks back, week 16, I believe, a Greg Joseph 61-yard field goal. The Giants still covered. There were 4s out there, 3.5 was, I think, the final where it closed at 3.5. There are some 3.5s popping out. BetMGM has it at 3, but you like the Vikings.
Yeah, it's a really tough one. And like you said, I lean towards the Vikings. And that's because this Giants defense, they have such a unique defense. They blitz at the highest rate in the NFL. They play man defense at the highest rate in the NFL. It actually could hurt Kirk Cousins. And that's because Kirk Cousins is 33rd of 39 quarterbacks in passer rating versus the blitz. So much like Josh Allen, where he was 31st of 39, Cousins even worse, 33rd of 39 versus the blitz in passer rating among eligible quarterbacks. So that definitely could hurt him. But on the flip side, the advanced metrics favor Minnesota. Again, if we go back to my third order Pythagorean win percentage, I have the Vikings at almost a 6-point favorite at a neutral site. And then you add in home field advantage. Now, again, third order Pythagorean isn't going to get you there all the way, but I think that definitely shows that we should be leaning Minnesota in this direction by the advanced, just expected points metrics, the way these teams should have performed throughout the year versus, what they actually did. So I think I lean Minnesota for that reason, but I certainly think this could hurt Kirk Cousins, this matchup. And also, I think the Giants receivers could shine. So in a matchup perspective, I do think it brings it a lot closer. Minnesota, also a very high zone defense team. And the Giants receivers, other than Richie James, all much better in yards per route run versus the zone than versus man defense.
On to Baltimore, Cincinnati. These teams faced each other yesterday, but we found out the Bengals, they played their guys, jumped out to an early lead. The Ravens without Lamar and other significant pieces, Mark Andrews, J.K. Dobbins. I mean, you pretty much felt once they ruled Andrews out that the Ravens were punting on the game. That's what it felt like. They met in week 5 in Baltimore. Ravens won and snuck away 19-17, late Justin Tucker field goal. I was with Jill Gallant, who works with you on the Bet What Happens live show, and Jill said this last night on the Action Network podcast. We were doing our special hot read edition because it wasn't just one game, of course, with Brandon Anderson and Joe Gallant. We had 6 games to look at. But I think Jill made a pretty simple point. If you think, based on reporting or your gut feeling, if you think Lamar plays, well, you better take the Ravens now because that number is going to drop. If you don't think he's going to play, take the Bengals now inside of a touchdown. Of course, you're waiting on the news of Lamar. What do you make of that assessment?
Yeah, I actually think if we wait on the news of Lamar and he does end up playing, obviously this line should move toward Baltimore some more. And then I actually think I would like taking Cincinnati here. So let's do the third order Pythag trick again. In this case, it's about a 4.5 points for Cincinnati at a neutral, and then you add in home field advantage. I think if it moves down under that key number of 6, like in that 5.5, 5-4 range, I'd look to maybe bet or at least lean towards Cincinnati versus the spread. Cincinnati, they have some really good matchups for their outside wide receivers, T. Higgins, Jamar Chase. Also, I think Samaje Perine could factor in here as Baltimore does struggle versus pass catching running backs. So I think this is a tough one that I'm kind of just waiting on, and I want to see where it ends up before I end up potentially backing Cincinnati here. But the advanced metrics do like Cincinnati. They should be favored to win by about a touchdown, even if Lamar Jackson plays per my third order Pythag expectations. So if it goes down under a touchdown, that's what I'll be doing.
Yeah, the Lamar news is very different, of course, than Tua because well, Tua's just been in the news all year with injuries, and the Dolphins have to tread water very carefully, right? Because of his situation, and they need to, of course, it goes without saying, you got to take care of these guys and make sure they're okay to play. I totally understand that. When it comes to Lamar, though, you can't help but wonder, is there a contract issue? Or John Harbaugh's done a pretty good job of keeping it quiet, like he did this past week. Like, we're not going to address that. So perhaps the Ravens, they have it exactly where they want it. Like, we're going to keep this behind the scenes, very quiet, because we really don't know with Lamar. At least with Tua, we've seen it. It's been visual. Mike McDaniel's a little more outspoken than John Harbaugh. So if maybe the Ravens are like, we're just going to shut him down till we get to the playoffs, and maybe they read this perfectly. So we'll find out. But yeah, two very different situations, and maybe the Ravens have been not fooling us, but they've kept this quiet for a reason all along.
Yeah.
We'll find out. All right, let's wrap up, Nick. We've got Tampa and Dallas on Monday night. Bucks hosting Dallas as a home. Tom Brady's a home underdog. Tom Brady's a home underdog after an 8-9 season. Yesterday didn't mean anything for the Bucks. But Tampa, it's at 3 now. Juice on Tampa. The juice coming in on Tampa +3 now, -120 at BetMGM. +100 if you take Dallas -3. Totals at 45.5 now. Your thoughts on this game?
Yeah, I like the over on this game. So when we look at our luck rankings, this one is a luck total over. So, we're showing +3.6 about points of value versus where these teams have actually scored over the course of the season, what we expect them to score. So I already bet over 44.5. I also lean Tampa Bay +3 here. And that's just, again, based off that third order expectation. These two teams are much closer to, not a coin flip, but under a field goal for Tampa Bay. Obviously, Dak Prescott has been better for the team than Cooper Rush, but maybe not as much as we thought. Dak's been throwing a lot of interceptions this year. And on the flip side of the ball, Tom Brady, he has struggled versus pressure. Now, Dallas does generate pressure at a pretty high rate, and highest pressure rate in the NFL. And Brady is only 35th out of 39 quarterbacks in passer rating versus pressure. So that's going to be a tough matchup for him. But I think it will be okay as long as he can get the ball to his slot receiver, Chris Godwin. And you can absolutely attack the slot versus Dallas. I've been creating my own kind of slot metric for slot receivers. And it's basically a blended metric of efficiency, volume, and touchdowns. And Dallas is 7th worst in the NFL in my slot receiver metric. So Chris Godwin, I think, is going to be the key here for Tampa Bay. If Tom Brady's under pressure, can he make those short passes to Chris Godwin? Because Godwin does have a very low average depth of target. So I think he'll be the key here. But on the flip side of the ball, Dallas also can attack the slot. Tampa Bay, terrible versus the slot. They're actually 2nd worst in the NFL versus slot receivers, and they struggle versus the tight end position as well. So it could be Dalton Schultz game, a CD Lamb game. He winds up in the slot a lot. So there could absolutely be some scoring here if Tom Brady can move the ball to Chris Godwin under pressure. So that's why I like the over. And I think the advanced metrics say that Tampa Bay probably covers the +3, not the +3. And maybe they pull the upset. We'll see.
Oh, I'd love that. I would love for Tom just to remind everybody that you can't count him out this time of year. These teams met week 1. I also buried that lead too. Tampa won 19-3. That's when Dak got hurt. Everyone kind of lost their minds. Even Jerry Jones did. It turns out Dak came back and he's still the quarterback. Has turned the ball over lately. But and those two players you mentioned, or at least 2 of the 3 you mentioned there, Godwin for Tampa and Lamb for Dallas. They didn't have great performances. Godwin was still coming off the injury, and Lamb didn't have one of his better games of the year. At the same time, though, those defenses were healthy and super dialed in across the board at that point, and they've both kind of come back down to earth lately.
Another interesting note, this is a luck difference game of 17. Tampa Bay is 19th in our luck rankings after the update that I did about 15 minutes before this show started. And Dallas is 2nd in our luck rankings. So this is a difference of 17, falls in that 16+ category, which has gone exactly 60% against the spread this year.
Okay, very good. Nick Giffen, extensive breakdown, first thoughts on Super Wildcard Weekend. You can find what he has already bet in the Action Network app, and we'll get to that later in the show as well. But you've already made some plays. Some of these you haven't played yet. Just to be very clear, he hasn't bet all of these games, but he's bet a handful. So if you're looking for those, go find him in the app. Nick Giffen, thanks a lot for the time.
Yep, enjoy the weekend, everyone.
All right. I'm sure we'll talk to Nick again this week if he's up for it. He always is. That's just a way of me saying that Nick does a great job for us here at Action. Here's your NBA market report. Before we get out of here, here are some games we're looking at. Milwaukee is a small favorite against the Knicks. Celtics, they're laying almost 9 points at home against the Bulls, a team that the Bulls have actually played Boston pretty well this year. So keep an eye on that. Celtics did have were quite heavily favored against the Spurs on Saturday. Did not get there, but they did win the game. And the Denver Nuggets playing the Lakers. They're laying almost 10. Let's get thoughts from the crew.
Everybody, happy Monday. It's Joe Dellera, and I've got two of my favorite plays for today's NBA slate. The first play that I'm looking at is in the Knicks versus Bucks game, and it's Julius Randle to go under 41.5 points, rebounds, and assists. Although Randle has been on an absolute tear lately, I like him to go under this prop as I think it's just a touch high, especially in a really tough matchup against Giannis Antetokounmpo and Brook Lopez down on the interior. On the season, when we look at Julius Randle, he has only averaged 36.3 points, rebounds, and assists. Even though he's averaging 47 over his last 10 games, it's been against far inferior opponents on the interior, including San Antonio, Houston, and San Antonio again, and Dallas. So this is a matchup against the Bucks team that I think he's going to struggle on. Over the course of the last two seasons, he's averaging just 29.5 points, rebounds, and assists, and has gone under this in 5 consecutive games against Milwaukee. So I like him to go under 41.5 points, rebounds, and assists on a number that I think is inflated by his recent play, and it's just a little bit too high in this matchup. The second play that I like is for LeBron James to go over 13.5 rebounds and assists against the Denver Nuggets. This is a number that he's had much success with over the recent history, including going over this line in 2 of 3 against Denver this season and in 7 of his last 10 games, while averaging 14.9 rebounds and assists. Considering the way he has been scoring and the way that he has been really taking on the offensive load, I think that he's been able to capture this line while distributing early to his teammates and securing rebounds. So I like the 13.5 at a little bit of juice at minus 135 or so. But if the 14.5 is available to you and that's all that you have, that's okay. So the two plays that I like for today's Monday NBA slate are Julius Randle to go under 41.5 points, rebounds, and assists, and LeBron James to go over 13.5 rebounds and assists.
Okay, Joe Dellera, thank you very much. Couple of player props tonight. If you're looking for them again, or if you got to go eat lunch and you forget, well, the picks are saved and loaded in the Action Network app. We have an account for the show, Green Dot Daily. Every pick that's given out on the show is logged there. Futures as well, even though we don't have any of those today. But picks from Nick Giffen that he gave out moments ago. And then, of course, Collin Wilson, Mike Calabrese, our college football guys on the national title game tonight. Those will be there as well at Green Dot Daily. One more reminder before we wrap up the show. Tonight, BBOC, Big Bets on Campus, special edition at 6 o'clock tonight, 6 Eastern. You'll get the usual suspects. They're going to come on and break down TCU and Georgia, give out their final picks, their best bets, and just their latest thoughts. As we know, the line could move in certain directions, of course, as the day goes on. So be sure to check that out. 6 o'clock, BBOC, Stuckey, Collin, Calabrese, they'll all be there. Collin's on site in Los Angeles. So looking forward to a good show to wrap up the college football portion of the calendar. Green Dot Daily is presented by BetMGM. Use the bonus code ACTION when signing up to get a free insurance bet up to $1,000. Terms and conditions apply. Thanks to everyone who joined the show. Folks behind the scenes, Brendan Glass-Sheen will be back tomorrow, noon Eastern, for Green Dot Daily. See you then.